I think we are live. All right. Welcome back to Honestly Speaking. As per usual, how are you doing? I got this little piece of my hair like this. But anyway, how are you doing? Hopefully, you have a community that's pouring into you and one that you are pouring into. I am one of your four illustrious hosts for the day, Honest-Leigh. We got, of course, as per usual, Coach J. We got our man G, and definitely the Coco King. What's his name, Jay? What's his name? What's Coco name?
Byron.
But yeah, our co-host, Crystal Clear, is actually not feeling well. So please, if you can remember her in your prayers. We don't know if it's the vid or whatever. She's supposed to be taking tests, but either way, she's down. So we pray for her and just for her healing. So we're waiting for some people to check in, folks. I see we got somebody watching. We're waiting for some people to check in. Hopefully, individuals start checking in soon. Um, Today's topic, right? So while the people check in, I'm going to say Happy New Year. We haven't met since last year. We did our year closing last year. So definitely Happy New Year. I want to say to those who know about the people in Tongo, please be praying for the individuals in Tongo. For those who don't know, a volcano erupted. Some people are questioning if it was legitimate or if it wasn't, but that's neither here nor there. What is here or there is knowing that individuals knowing that people lost their lives and are suffering. So if we could remember them. Um, yeah. What else? Shout out to everybody that's here. I'm looking. Ah, hey, I see we got Catson from Florida. Shout out. Definitely praying for Crystal Clear. For those who are looking on Facebook, it's an issue. Facebook doesn't allow us to put our comments up, and I don't know if it's my stream or what, but it's not allowing me to put my comments up. So, but yeah, shout out to all the people who are checking in. If you're checking in from Facebook and y'all see the person checking in, please feel free, y'all, to say this person is here with us, because I can't see. If you see us looking down on our phone, it's because we're checking other streams for social media. Anyway, yeah, Happy New Year. We're definitely praying for the people of Tongo. A lot is going on. A lot is going on in the world. We're not going to get in. Today, we're going to talk about what holds us back, right? What holds us back? In addition to world events, you got people spitting in people's eyes during the pando. It's a lot. It's a lot going on. It's a lot going on, folks, and we're not going to talk about that right
We're not
now.
gonna talk about that right now.
We're not going to talk about that right now, but it's definitely a lot going on. But the topic we are going to talk about is what holds us back, what stunts our growth. So for those in the chat, I want you to let me know, what do you think? What stunts your growth? What stunts your growth? I see Kay Johnson. Happy birthday, Kay Johnson. Happy birthday, Kay Johnson. Said peace and blessings. All right. We're definitely praying that you have a beautiful birthday. And yeah, thank you for wishing us a happy new year. All right. But what stunts our growth? Think about it, y'all. What stunts our growth? So we thought about it in terms of the isms and somebody already coming at your neck, Jay. Somebody said Jonas stunts my growth.
Jonas, why you do that, Jonas? Why you do that?
Shots fired.
That's all, man, Christian.
Then they said, just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. That's my guy, folks. That's my guy. We know it was just kidding. Jonas is a moderator. He has a Grinch by his name. If it wasn't true, that comment just said real quick. But yeah, we're talking about like real topics, like what stunts our growth. So we started thinking about it. We have the E's and the S's and the isms that stunt our growth, right? So what do I mean by that? Like anything that stunts our growth is something that keeps us from operating optimally, right? So we came up with a series of questions, right? And we're going to talk about some, already gave the definition of what stunts our growth, right? But beforehand, anybody in the chat, anybody want to say personally or us, what do you think stunts your growth? Thank you, Alton. Shout out to Alton. That's right. Hit the like button. Hit the like button and subscribe. Shout out to Alton Johnson. For those in urban apologetics, check out Alton Johnson's yeah, that's my cousin. We got the same last name, Alton. I ain't even tell you that. But check out Alton Station, y'all, for those who are into urban apologetics. Yeah. It says people's opinions. People's opinions stunt people's growth. What else? What else? What else do we think stunts our growth?
Negative core beliefs.
Negative core beliefs.
Yikes.
Negative core beliefs. That's right. What do you unpack that? What you mean? You go negative core beliefs. What does that mean?
That was too hard to just like let it fly. No, I'm joking. Negative core beliefs. So, core belief is something that you hold basically in the core or the center of yourself. Is what I often call programming. Things that you take in from other people. Like if you could picture your mind as being a computer and someone typing in code telling you who you are, what you should be, what you're capable of doing, what you're not capable of doing, what people like us can achieve, you know, those type of things. You know, all of the stereotypes and um, suggestions I'll say that come from society, um, come from your loved ones. And the difficult thing for me is how um, people can believe something that is false and they can pass it down for years and years and years, generation to generation. And it takes one person to figure it out like, dang, that's a lie. That ain't nowhere near correct. And you're like, wow. Like I'll give you a for instance, and it's not that deep. It's a street around the corner. I'm trying to think of the name of the street and I'm drawing a blank. But whatever the name of the street is, Westminster. Everybody calls it Westminster. But I had a friend from New York. He's from New York, and it's a spot that you could spray paint on. And he was like, yeah, you live on such street? I was like, yeah, I'm right around the corner from that street. He was like, yeah, it's around the corner for you. Go check it out. I put something up there, and I was like, okay. He was like, it's Westminster. And I was like, no, man, it ain't Westminster. It's Westminster, you know? And he was like, no, it's Westminster. And I'm like, what? I literally had him on the phone and walked around the corner and looked at it to show him that he was wrong and I was wrong. I was wrong. But everybody, adults, grandparents, great grandparents, will tell you that it's Westminster, you know? So that belief that without even reading the sign, something that's been up there before I was born, not reading the sign, just taking the word of what people have told me and accepting it as the truth. And it took someone from the outside to correct me just on a regular casual conversation, you know. So if something that trivial could happen, imagine when it comes to who you are, you know, what do you think you can accomplish? And all the messages that somebody can place in your mind on what you're capable of being or capable of achieving. It could be positive or negative. You know, I wish it was more positive, but you know, I feel like it's more negative. It's more negative assumptions and core beliefs that are programmed into us.
Mm.
Yo, can I throw out cultural core beliefs? Because I think sometimes it might not be a positive or negative, but it's like cultural. Like, and I
Okay.
remember like this one analogy of just like, um, in some non-American cultures, if you eat at the table and you don't belch before you leave, it's seen as disrespect, right? And so it's just being able to understand those who are around you,
Mm.
because you could take a cultural belief that's not good or bad, but if in different areas of life or different like countries, you could be in someone else's country thinking they're being disrespectful, but it's like no, they're doing what's culturally appropriate for their people.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, yeah.
Did you want to add anything, Coco?
Absolutely not.
All right, so I wanted to share something, right? So before we get into it on a larger level, I wanted to share something. So the reason why we talk about these isms and these E's and these S's, we're going to talk about them briefly, but um as somebody who likes to study people, I am going to share my screen and I realize that a lot of this, excuse me, a lot of this has to do with us not understanding things on various levels. And I believe isms operate, specifically isms, even E's, but isms operate on three levels. And I just wanted to talk about this real quick because many of the things we're going to talk about, I want us to see where we put them, right? So can y'all see this? Mhm.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
great. So so you have isms, right? So there's the personal isms, right? So then there's like the choices, the expectations, the lack of accountability, responsibility. It can look like culture. When it comes to racism, it can look like phenotype and things like that you prefer, right? Then it's structural, right? And structural also has to do with certain aspects of culture, but it's really about systems. That's when we talk about like capitalism, socialism, you know what I mean? Those isms, communism, those isms, right? And then it's the spiritual, right? And although the spiritual aspect of isms is the denial of the imago Dei. Now, on honestly speaking, on the lives, we really don't go in on that, but I'm actually about to start something with Crystal Clear called Clear and Honest, where we dig a bit more into the spiritual aspect of things because I just felt like it was necessary and it's important for us to build community to hash out these tough questions, right? So the problem is when it comes to the spiritual aspect of isms, the imago Dei is the fact that the Bible states that everyone is created in the image of God, meaning we have inherited value, worth, and dignity that is due to us, right? Meaning we have a mind, we have a will, we have a soul, right? And so what happens is any type of ism, I don't care if it's homophobia. We're not going to talk about whether you agree with the homosexual acts and all that other stuff, but any type of ism that is an offense to the imago Dei is wrong, right? So then there's the spirit of partiality. The Bible talks about the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the people who thought that they knew it all and missed the heart of God, and the other people who were so intellectual that they felt like God couldn't even move and do certain supernatural things, right? And then you got actual spiritual forces behind stuff. So spirit of pride, greed, murder, hatred, lying, even a spirit of partiality, perversions, lust, and even more, right? So all of those things, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. All of the things that we're going to talk about actually fit into these categories in one way or another. So I want to talk about that. And some of us are going in, some of us are going deep. Mayfield said comfort. Hey, comfort. Definitely that there's I pledged the organization in college of sisterhood. I'm no longer active in the sisterhood just because of oaths, but I always call them my sisters. And we have a brother organization. My sisterhood name is Swing Fi Swing. My brotherhood name is Groove Fi Groove. One of the founders of Groove Fi Groove said, There is no comfort in a growth zone and no growth in a comfort zone. And I never forgot it because it's so true. It's so true. I was talking to one of my friends recently who made the statement about how when it's time for us to get in shape, you have to do something really drastic for the first, she said, 20, 21 to 30 days in order for it to really change and you to reach a different level of homeostasis. I think that's extremely important for us. So with that having been said, so with that having been said, Kay said this stunts people's growth. When we misquote scripture, example, God protect babies and fools. That's nowhere in the Bible. That definitely will stunt people's growth. Not only the misquoting, but the misinterpretation and the misapplication will definitely do
or
it.
lack of application.
The wrong visual, okay, will definitely stunt somebody's growth. So as we go, we're going to begin to talk about certain things, right? So we got a few questions, right? So I'm going to define some stuff before we get into it. I want to talk about when we say ease, right? I don't want us to think the letter E, but really IESs, right? IESs. So what we mean by that is we mean insecurities, immaturities, and partialities, okay? Immaturities, insecurities, and partialities. Those are the E's that we're talking about when someone is immature, right? Meaning they're not at the level that they should be for their health. And notice we didn't use the word normal. We don't use the word normal. Everybody know where their level of health should be. And if you don't, there's professionals and others to help you, right? Insecurities. We're going to talk about how do insecurities stunt your growth, impartialities. That includes all of those isms we were talking about. All and some of the E's, right? Um, the isms, right? Is uh, predatory capitalism and predatory socialism. Okay, it's a difference between capitalism and crony capitalism or predatory capitalism. Why do I say that? Because we all want to make money. We all want to make money, and socialism doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Most even libertarians still agree that certain programs should exist, like hospitals, like the post office, like the police. Those are all social programs, that the fire department, that should exist. And I know some people out there don't want the cops to exist, but I'm telling you, all you would do is create a new issue if the cops didn't exist. Like anyway, that's because they were once not the cops. So, but anyway, we'll talk about that at another time. That's a whole nother discussion. Self-centered humanism, not to be conflated with like biblical humanism, right? But self-centered humanism, racism and sexism are isms, right? So we talked about the E's, we just said the isms, and what we mean by the S's or the Nesses, right? Bitterness, unforgiveness, right? Cowardice, and pridefulness slash, or not slash, pridefulness and prowessness. Okay. So we'll talk about each of those, and we have questions to deal with each of those. All right. So the first question that we have, let me look here, real quick. Um, why do you, and whoever has this question, definitely take it. And y'all in the chat, y'all let me know what y'all think to these questions too. But why do you think insecurities and immaturities hold us back?
I think you got to define it.
Okay.
The reason I'm saying is because a lot of people use words kind of like the explanation I gave earlier. They'll
Mm-hmm.
use words in a certain context, and it doesn't necessarily properly use the definition of the word.
Mm,
So, insecurity, like if someone calls me insecure, is it a negative or is it a positive? Um,
mm,
it may not be a negative. I mean, if you look up the definition, you know, in my head, insecurity is like it's darn near Kanye West song. You know, like
Mhm.
going through the whole song is like it's worrying about what other people think about you
There you go.
and not being comfortable within your own self and who you are and knowing who you are.
Right.
Um, where as though some people might use it as um you're uncomfortable or you're I can't even put it into words how they use it, but 9 times out of 10 it seems like it's an insult, you know, but when you read the definition it's like anxiety. You're
Right.
having anxiety. And then you got to question why, if you are truly insecure, why are you insecure?
I'm glad you said that because people do weaponize stuff that shouldn't be weaponized, like insecure. There are reasons why people should be insecure. If they're up against a challenge that they didn't face before, if they doubt themselves. And I think we live in a society that tries to tell people that you shouldn't fear anything. So if you fear anything that everybody fears, then somehow you're insecure, and if you're insecure you're wrong. I think that's looking at it in a very very deep way. And I like it. Anybody else want to speak to that statement? I'm going to read. I know G gave an operational definition of insecure. I'm going to read definitions of insecure and immature, just to do exactly what he said do, right? And let me know in the chat what y'all think. Insecure is when someone is not sure or certain, when they're doubtful, when they're not firm, when they're unsteady. Okay? When something is inadequately guarded, right? So it's you're lacking certainty, right? And then immaturity is the state of not being fully developed, right? Or you're incomplete, right? So given those things, how do those things actually hold us back?
So I got two things. Is I have lack of confidence for insecure, and then lack of protection, right? And the protection one kind of says like it's like you're a state of being open to danger or threats, which means like if that happens, like if somebody's about to rob me and I don't have a gun, they got a gun, I'm insecure, right? Therefore, my hands go up and I don't try to fight.
100%.
Yeah, um, you're muted.
You're muted, Lee.
Got you. Also, I want I don't know if we Sarah Enslin, who's in Mexico, shout out to Mexico, tuning in from Mexico, um, said that how can insecurity be a positive? And I think we kind of answered that because it's not necessarily that it's a positive, it's just not a negative.
Right.
It's just, yeah, it's just not a
That's like,
negative. It shows you where you actually, it's positive in the sense that it shows you that you still need to grow.
right.
Um,
If you're
um,
willing to recognize it,
if
you
you're
know.
willing to recognize it. And I may shout out to you, I may.
I may.
Yeah, I may.
Yay!
um, I may said yes, no growth in the comfort zone, definitely. And we talked about that. For those who didn't see, check out the YouTube channel from the last one that we did 3 weeks ago, because we talked about the lessons that we should have learned in 2022. I mean 2021, right? So we see that certain people are saying um, insecurities hold them back. Now, does anybody want to comment on anything Jonas said as far as why insecurities hold us back?
Well, yeah, I wanted to piggyback off of that because one of the things is insecurities can cause a lack of execution. So if you're not secure in where you're at or how you're feeling or whatever the case may be, you're not going to pull the trigger, take the shot, or do the things that you need to do. And that's how one of the ways it can hold you back and lead to just not being there, not being where you need to be.
100.
Yeah, I think
Just wanted
some
to, oh, go
outside
ahead.
things too. My fault. Yeah, I think they're out. Like, so the insecurity may come from like, all right, maybe if I was playing basketball, I watched a lot of basketball videos. I'm like, dang, I can't do what Kobe or Jordan did, right? So I'm insecure. Um, you're like, hey, you know what? Somebody's making a lot of money, legally or illegally, right? So now you're like this. I'm trying to compete with this, but if I do it legally, it's more difficult to compete with someone who's not doing it legally. And so you're like this. I feel insecure and I can't do these things. Um, and so sometimes I'll say, your insecurity, I think, as you kind of alluded to a little bit, is like when you get cut and you see blood, you know you need a band-aid, right? And so there's like, what do you do with it?
Mm. So my question is, you see what's on the screen, right? Um, Coca, you see what's on the screen? Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Can you read it? What does it say?
Insecurity gives me sign of weakness.
Mm. Okay, so what do you think about that? What do you think about what are your initial thoughts about that?
I think that statement goes along with what G stated in the beginning when he said that we tend to weaponize certain things, or we tend to interpret things to mean certain things that they don't actually mean. And
Mm-hmm.
to honestly, typically that's what insecurities are seen as. If you're insecure, you're weak about something. Weak could be an extreme word. It could just mean that you're lacking in certain areas. And there's nothing wrong with lacking, or there's nothing wrong with being weak.
That
We
part.
can we go to the gym because we want to get stronger
That part.
physically. We want to
Mm-hmm.
improve our muscle density because we are weak in areas of physical strength.
Right.
So that statement is spot on. It also leads to it's okay to be weak, because we all, when we were born, we couldn't walk, talk, and do all these things. We were weak. We needed somebody to help us out, and we needed to work and get to the place that we needed to get to. A lot of times as adults, we tend to stop working and figure like we're a finished product. I am who I am. This is me. Like, nah, that ain't always the case. You can always put the work in, and we all have areas of weakness, but typically insecurity is seen as like emotional and mental weakness in the face of not even real adversity, just for the sake of being vulnerable. That's what it is. People are vulnerable when they show you their weakness or they show you their insecurity, and a lot of times the insecurity is then translated into a weakness or inadequacy.
Mm.
But that isn't
Yeah,
it
yeah.
stronger to be able to show the fact that you are going through something?
Say
And
that again, because you went out at a very
okay,
pivotal point. Say it again.
isn't it something to be able to show that you're actually stronger when you're able to show that you're going through something? You
Mm.
know, a lot of times we want to give people this Facebook social media perception that's perfect. You know what I mean? Like my hair is never out of place. My beard is always trimmed. I don't never have a 5 o'clock shadow on my bald head. You know, check me out. Okay. Like, come on, man. That's not for real. That's not for real. And a lot of times as men, I'm not sure as a woman because I'm not one, so I can't speak on it. But as men, we give this false bravado about being okay 100% of the time because um, that's what society say we're supposed to be like. You know, we're not supposed to show any quote unquote weakness. We're not supposed to be depressed. We're not supposed to experience any anxiety. These all these emotions, sadness. We're not supposed to experience these things, but they all human emotions. They're not feminine emotions. And it upsets me when people talk about emotions and make them seem like one, they're feminine, and two, femininity is a negative. There's
Mm.
nothing wrong with females. There's nothing wrong with women, and there's nothing wrong with um, experiencing, uh, and I hate saying it, feminine emotions, but that's what people equate it to.
Yeah,
Is
we weaponize emotions. We say stuff to women like, "Oh, don't be emotional." When
right.
anger is an emotion, and we don't ever tell a man who's angry. Well, we
Don't be
rarely tell men who are angry, "Don't be emotional." We tell him to calm down, but we
calm
tell
down.
a woman who's angry as well, "Don't be emotional." Yeah, that's.
Right.
I mean,
It's a flip side. women can't be angry, men can't be
Vulnerable,
visually upset and
right?
vulnerable. Yeah,
Men
exactly. You
can be
can't.
vulnerable. You can't be. Men can be, and so that leads me to this, right? That leads me to this. It said uh it's not as in weak, more so as in not confident. But here's the thing, right? That's how weakness is seen. That's how not confident is seen, as weak. And people, to what G said, to what Coco said, to even what Coach J said earlier, and even alluded to, is that we make weak wrong. And weak is not wrong. Weak, it's there. Weak is just that. It is weak. And weak by definition, and this goes back to our primitive mind that is trying to always protect us, weak means vulnerable. So and because weak is vulnerable, then you're not safe. And
It
so
just
we
means you got
think
room to
even like
grow.
Yeah, but yeah.
go ahead.
I want
I
to
want to
think.
say this really quick. I want
But
to say this really quick about insecurity. Sarah Enslin said, the way uh in a way, awareness of insecurity is positive because it can expose injustices that need to be confronted and dealt with, so that those who are in the position of insecurity have safety and support instead of and support instead, just thinking of it. So she's even looking at it on a grander, on a structural, on a societal level. Yeah, but anyway, go ahead. What y'all were gonna say?
I wanted to kind of flip a analogy that Marcus, the king,
Who?
the king, the king said, because he was like, when you're an infant, like you grow, but like, um, when you're born, you're immature. Like you're born because you're here, but you have no tools yet. So you're given tools as you get older. Now, if depending on your background, if you don't get the tools you need for something, or actually, if you don't get the tools that someone else needs from you, they call you immature,
Mm.
right? And I'm like this. All right, maybe they're not immature. You can't use them, and so they're immature for you. But are you looking at the idea of like, how can I get them to a place of maturity, and then we can be mutually beneficial to each other?
Yeah, but I think that still means that they're immature, and there's nothing wrong with that because they were never given the things that they needed. To your
Right, but no one really, they don't really validate the part like, hey, you weren't
yeah,
given. It's like you
we
just
definitely don't do
it's the blanket statement
that.
that
No. That's
weaponizes
right.
it.
That's right.
Yeah,
But
You
right, it
you
goes back to the weaponization of
yeah,
words without actually looking at their literal meaning.
so
yeah.
I remember having a conversation with somebody and they said something, and I used the cliche, ignorance is bliss, because what they stated, what showed the lack of knowledge in a certain area. They got mad at me and said, I'm not effing ignorant. Who the F is you talking to? And I'm like, by the literal meaning of ignorant, you are in that area. And
right.
so going back to what we're talking about as far as insecurity, insecurity is not just a relationship thing. Like insecure is not just about being in a relationship and not trusting your partner or feeling inadequate. Insecure is a goes across all forms of life. I'm going into an interview and I'm not sure, but I'm confident. That's still a level of insecurity. So insecurity doesn't mean a lack of confidence. It just means a lack of security, a lack of actually pretty
Well,
much knowing. Like you're insecure because you're not sure. You don't have it. You don't have it.
But
It
the
could be a lack
result
of trust in people also. Because I looked at what Kay Johnson just said, right? I don't know
right,
if you threw
but
it up there,
let me
but
say this. Insecurity does mean a lack of confidence because of what you just said. So I can't be confident in myself because of what you said. The result of that means I lack confidence. Is literally a part of one of the lines of the definition. However, what we're doing, which I like, is we're getting to the core of it. And where you were about to say something about what Kay Johnson just said, Jay.
yeah,
Okay.
so, it brings me to some of the situations of this week, right? And someone shared their heart about how they felt about some things they held as their core beliefs. and how they said, I'm not holding these as my core beliefs anymore, right?
Mhm.
And I was watching this video, and I'm watching him. I'm like this. He is nervous about saying something that has changed within him, and so what he did was he went into deep study to try to almost convince himself that it's not true. Um, and then he came out and said, you know what, like I don't see it the same way, right? And people again, and then what happened was people started blasting him. People said a lot of positive things for him, but there was a lot of people who were just like condemning him for speaking up. And I'm like this is where insecurity comes from,
Right.
and I'll also say immature behavior, because like we'll do something immature to hide our insecurities, and I think that like and it kind of like creates a bigger, like, I guess, web that we weave. um,
I love that you said that, right? Because I want us to talk really quick about, so what do you think it'll take for us to not allow insecurity to impact our growth? I want us to be thinking about that, right? And I also want to say the result of insecurity, to Coach Jay's point, is we tend, I know in my experience, when I'm insecure, I'm hyper defensive. I'm hyper defensive about something because I don't want to be vulnerable, because I am that weak internally. And and internally, what I need is strength. And what happens is we become very afraid, to Kay Johnson's point, to be vulnerable. And so that's why I said, what do you think we need to do in order to strengthen us in ways so that our insecurities don't cause us to be hyper defensive? Because, pause for the cause, folks, when you're hyper defensive and you're insecure, you're also hard to love. So the person that keeps these like walls up, yeah, you're keeping people out in order to protect you, just like what we said, right? Because people aren't trustworthy, or because they've hurt you, or because they judge you. But you're also keeping the very help that needs to come in out. So, what are some of the things that we need to do in order to protect ourselves from that? Somebody already gave um, a, a, an example of something that we could be doing. They say, give yourself room to grow at your own speed. Give yourself room to grow at your own speed.
I will say be upfront.
Mm.
I think I've said this before, like, and when I go out on a date and meet someone for the first time, I'm always like, hey, let me know who you are, not who you want to be, because I don't want to date who you want to be, because you're not that person. So I have to figure out how to love you to that point. And if you lie up front saying, well, I'm this, I'm that, and I'm like this,
Even
well,
if you don't get to that point, I got to learn to love you right
yeah,
now.
but yeah, and they're like this now, and you're trying to, in your mind, you're like this, you're trying to manifest it before you're there. I'm like, I understand all that, but just be you, and we can work there together. But if you're not you, I'm going to be looking at it like you keep changing.
And
Um,
they're not changing. They're just showing you who they really are.
yeah. So almost
But what if they're insecure about who they are, but they know who they want to be?
Yeah, but they
It,
still got to
that's
accept who they are.
yeah.
In
right.
order to be who
I'm
they
not
want to be.
disputing that.
No,
No,
you're
you
right.
disputing
You
that.
right on it. I
I'm
mean, but
not
that's the
disputing
solution. The
it.
solution is to expose things, right?
Yeah.
Right, but
If you don't expose the wound, how does it heal? A lot of times
so
we just put the
wait,
band-aid and cover it
where
up,
are we learning to be? Where are we learning to be vulnerable in that way?
Oh, wait,
Where are we
wait. That's a
learning these
whole
tools?
nother
Where are we
question.
getting these
No, but
Finish,
tools?
I was getting there.
That's why I said. That's
All
why
right,
I
I'm gonna
said.
mute my mic. Go ahead.
That's why I said let Jay finish, because I saw it in his face when you said it. He looked like
You being
he
immature
stole
right
his
now.
thunder.
You got to the end of the story already. So, but yes, like, so I was telling a friend who hasn't gone out with anyone for a very long time. I said, and they were like, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. I don't want to put myself out too much. I don't want to get hurt. And I'm like this. That's a part of building relationships. Because if you go all this far and this person's walking on eggshells, not understanding how to hurt and not hurt you, then they're going to constantly hurt you, not knowing. So it's you have to open yourself up to that, and then when they hurt you, you get to see how they respond after that, right? But if they never know what hurts you, then it's like they can't respond and become different, you know. And I think who said it? Never mind. I was about to sing. I can't. I don't know the lyrics to the song without singing it, and I ain't gonna do that. So I'm gonna back up.
Are you
So
insecure about
so
singing?
G, so G,
I
I
am.
need you
I have an immature voice.
G, I need you to comment on this, right?
Okay.
Comment on this one. What do you think they mean
What do you think? Who means
on the
Oh,
the
screen?
unlearn to re. Okay.
on a what?
On the screen, it says
Unlearn,
unlearn to relearn.
unlearn to relearn. So kind of like what I was saying earlier, like looking at your core beliefs, unlearning those things, and then relearning some positive core beliefs. Reinforce those things. You know, the stuff that you've been taught is not always correct. Just because it feel good don't mean it's right. And a lot of times the stuff that's not right feels real good because you comfortable with doing it. You've been doing it for whatever your age number is. You've been doing it for that long. So it's super comfortable. You know, when you stay out of the gym for a minute like me, and then you go back and try to bench 225, you realize that 225 is like this is beyond this ain't my warm up no more.
That's
You
really
know, I gotta do the bar. I need to do the bar, warm up, get these muscles warm. Because I'm gonna hurt myself trying to do what used to be comfortable. You know, but
So
you
so
gotta
it
you got
seems go ahead.
go ahead. No, sometimes
And
you
so it
got you
seems like you said you have to have realistic expectations, or at least the first thing I think what I hear you saying is be
okay.
willing.
Oh,
Be
definitely.
willing because none of this is possible. All of this is a theory. It's the difference between a goal and a wish, right?
Mm,
So, like, be willing to pursue the things you're talking about. Be willing to unlearn and be willing to look at the things you think you know. Because you can't unlearn something that you don't that you think that you don't even realize you know. Case in point to Jay's point earlier. What we're talking about is a famous Christian hip hop artist who went to seminary and everything recently had a 20 almost 25-minute video denouncing his faith, right? And so some people were like upset, a lot of people were hurt, right? Some people were upset because they like wrongfully put him up on a pedestal.
I
Other
don't.
people were upset because they see oh man, another one bites the dust. And then there were some of us who were just like, maybe the thing you thought you knew, you never really knew. Maybe the thing, and I'm not saying whether this person did or didn't, but that was a thought that crossed my mind. Sometimes when I get into conversations, those who know me know I love apologetics. I love for the purposes of evangelism. I don't trying to argue just to argue. That's dumb, right? But sometimes I realize people are arguing against a false God. Like that's not even the God that I'm talking about. So they're like, yeah, and then you got on leather pants and you got on cotton shirts. So now what about that? Leviticus? I'm like, I ain't even what are you talking? You don't even know what you're talking about. So I think that I think that there are times where people fight against a straw man that they have been conditioned to think is the thing that you're presenting. The same thing works with different ideals. Different ideals. So your ideal image of self, the thing that you think is happy. You know, we look at relationships and be like, hashtag goals. Next, you know, they on TV getting a divorce. You like, oh, you know what I mean? Because you didn't really know the thing that you thought you knew. So be willing to say, I could be wrong. It requires a thing called humility, which is not, someone once said, it's not to think of yourself, it's not to think less of yourself, but to think of yourself less, meaning you don't put you at the center. So what were you going to say, Jay?
Oh, it was two things real quick. One is I I had that situation happen to me today. Today, I mentioned something about this Christian rapper on this thing, and someone was like, "Oh, you're a wine consultant? You can't have this conversation. That's not That's not for Jesus." And I was like, "Okay, first miracle."
Jesus literally made.
But anyway, so
But yeah, so
before I
so
proceed, the main this is the thing I think to G's point where we have to learn how to block things out. I think that's the best way to look at it, is that learning how to block things out, because when I go to the gym and I used to lift and then play ball and lift and play basketball and work out, right? And now I haven't been to the gym in 2 years, right? To me, it's embarrassing to go to the gym and lift the bar, right? And then
humility.
some girl walks in, and then I get immature, put some weight on that jaw, right? And then I'm stretching my arm out like, right?
And then
Trying
you
to
hurt.
look cool, right? But I can't use my arm for the rest of the week.
Well, wait, can
Foolish
I say something
pride.
to this? Can I say something to that? And then not you, but like say something like that happened, and then next thing you know, somebody, an immature dude, would then go and rant on social media about how girls ain't ish or people, and you're like, what? She didn't have anything to do. You try to impress her. Same thing. I see women do it all the time. I see men do it all the time. I see us do it all the time. This person ain't do nothing but walk into the room. And
Or
because the presuppositions we have, we respond in an insecure way, hurt ourselves, and then blame them.
and I'm saying, or I do that, and someone watches me and says, "Yo, I just got to do 4 reps of the bar and then throw 200 pounds on." So
They make
now
a
I'm
formula of
teaching
it.
someone without knowing them how to do it in an immature way, and all these people are getting hurt, right? So at some point, it's a difficult thing. We had this whole past 3 months is talking about trauma informed training and teaching at the school that I'm at, and I'm like this, yo, like, is the hurt teaching the hurt, but no one's actually in relationship to say I was foolish, you know? And so I think just figuring out how to block things out to get things done. And before I say this, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, but also you got to block out social media, not us, them.
Right. Please share this with your friends. If you're on Facebook, just hit the share button. Let people see what you're watching. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button. If you're on Facebook, hit the like button. But that's true. So it requires humility. It requires a willingness to question what your beliefs are, which is why there's this thing going on right now amongst many Christian circles. People are upset about this thing called deconstruction, where a person is breaking down what they believe. And as a Christian, there is a part of salvation called sanctification, right? And so sanctification is where the Lord purifies you on this side of eternity, right? So it's to make you more like Him in character. Part of the way we do that is by reading the Word. One of the verses that was the prompt to even the creation of this vlog slash podcast was Romans 12, verse 1, which says, like, stop being conformed to the pattern of this world, but be renewed by the transformation of your mind, right? So that's basically saying, let God deconstruct. God is going to deconstruct. The process of sanctification includes deconstruction. It includes it. So I'm not afraid when people deconstruct stuff, because it's exposing the things that they thought where they thought they stood, that they may not have stood. And it's okay. It's okay. And it's allowing you to see where the world system has entered into your particular way of thinking, right? It's important. Speaking of which, Kay Johnson said, everybody is not good at accepting the truth, especially about themselves. Hello. I know it's time. It's hard for me to accept the truth about myself. It's this one Facebook thing. It has it has the selfie and it has the tag picture. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. Even right now, y'all, I have this on an angle, right? I don't have it on like the angle where I'm like this, where my double chin is on. I don't have it on that. So we try to present ourselves in particular ways that are most beneficial, right? That's what we do, right? So I think that's important for us to be honest about ourselves, because a lot of times we're not. And the Bible does speak about you. Everybody not going to be on meat. We're going to be on milk. And sometimes there's areas in which we still need milk. We may have meat in one area and milk in another, and we need to be honest with ourselves and in order to get there, which means we got to be humble and do the things that we were talking about before. All right, we're rolling. Um, she on Facebook said that's 100. He said that's so deep. Um, my cousin Houston Mobile Henna hit her up on social media. She is the mobile henna artist to the likes of Erica Badu. Yeah, I think it's a couple. What's the girl that's saying? What's her name? Ella May. Monique. A bunch of comedians. So hit her up. Check her out. I'm giving you shout outs. She said, "Say that, Lee." I'm saying it. She's gifted, 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 gifted. So as we move on, let's talk about some of the other isms, right? So somebody want to talk about humanism really quick before we get into that. I just want to say I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but there is nothing wrong with the theory of a lot of isms, such as capitalism or either socialism. At the core, they sound good, but the problem is they become this thing called fascism, right? And fascism is basically one individual leading over in an evil way a group of people, right? Um, and I think that it's ways to get it. It's ways to get to it. I hear Americans talk about no, communism is the enemy, and yet they want to do all this business with China. Make it make sense. We owe China all this money. Make it make sense. So their communism is dictating our capitalism. Oh, hello. So at the end of the day, it really is the heart of the matter is really the matter of the heart, folks. That's what I gotta say with world structures and the isms and all of that is wickedness in the heart of individuals. So with that having been said, who's up next with the next question about humanism and self-centered humanism?
Yeah, so I looked at it and I'm like, well, so the self-centered humanism or humanist is someone who focuses on self, obviously, but there's no real responsibility to others, right? So it's like, hey, I'm pushing myself to the top, and me having to use other people as a springboard, as a step, as a rug, as a coffee table, uh, means it is what it is. You should have been in a better position not to be something that's useful for me. And then I look at humanism. I'm like this. It's interesting because it's like I care about other people from my viewpoint, right? And so I do it. So it's almost like where at times missions would be like, hey, we're going here to talk to them about Jesus and how we do things here in America, right? And so it's like this, we don't want your American Christianity. The Jesus is cool, but you're pushing like something else alongside of this in your missions. Like live like us, be like us, articulate like us, you know? And so I think that like that's another weird piece. Now, I know there's a thing called Christian humanism. That
I don't even.
You never heard of that?
No, I've heard of it, but I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of progressive theories and all of these doctrines that people later, when they grow in the Lord, they're like, "Oh, I was dead wrong for thinking that." So anyway, go ahead. You want to talk about it? You can talk.
But no, Christian humanism is similar to just humanism, except for the informed scope that is coming from a Christian's perspective, instead of like a non-Christian perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think where I struggle with that, instead of saying it's not humanism, I think that the issue with humanism is that oftentimes the aim of humanism is to be our best self. From a Christian humanism perspective, it's us doing that unto the glory of God, acknowledging the imago Dei in everyone. And I'm like, that's a bit redundant. Just say you a Christian. That's kind of how I see it. That's why I said what I said. And I'm sure there's more to it. I'm not going to ask.
Okay, I'm gonna stop. So I was about to say something. I said,
Yeah. I'm sure there's more to it. I'm not
"You
going
want
to
to be
ask
shadow
a
banned."
or a scholar in that vein to like beat me in the head with it. Well, actually, and I'm just saying, I think I think we lose people with a lot of theories and things like that. Although there is a time for that, right?
Right.
There is definitely a
And
time
I
for
had a
that.
conversation with someone today, and because they said to ask me like, "Are you a humanist?" I'm like this, and I'm like, well, it depends on what you mean, because I think that like in some areas of humanism, like you find scriptural principles, right? Like that you're not just living for yourself, but for the welfare of other people. But you're doing things for the welfare of other people, and I'm like, yeah, Jesus came and he did things for the welfare of other people. Um, but it you can is a fine line you can walk, and it turns to something else.
Mm, mm. Yep, it is. It is a fine line because if your aim is just to be the best human and you're not anchored in anything that's going to sway. Like we see that in society. Like, think about it. In, we could say about 200 years ago, if a man was walking down the street and held the hand of another man romantically, someone could walk up to them and kill them, and they could castigate them and say that you were wicked and all this other stuff. Now, if two men walk down the street and hold hands and you make a face, they could get you kicked off of social media if they catch you making that face.
Oh,
So,
sorry, I gotta just jump in here because I know I saw this law that was passed that said, hey, it is illegal to make people in a public sector or private sector, education or whatever, is to make white people feel uncomfortable. Did you hear about that?
to
This
make,
law, there's a law that was passed
In Florida or somewhere like that.
Florida, here it is in Florida, where you're not allowed to teach something
oh yeah,
that
it's
makes
gonna make white
white
people
people uncomfortable.
The
right.
CRT stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, so that's humanism. It's like, hey, for this specific group, we want to make them comfortable, but not. It's not a worldwide thing. It's not a all Americans. But one guy said that black people were
Hmm,
taking votes for Americans. But we'll stop there.
But I think when it comes to
interesting.
that, and that kind of segues into the next topic we're going to talk about. When it comes to that, what goes to my mind is, okay, so why don't people say that the way we've been teaching history makes us feel uncomfortable? You know what I mean? It's kind of like what it is it's a lot of what we do, not you individually, not you individually, but we do this as a society. We project, right? We project, and we say, well, it's kind of like the person. I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship where you've cheated on somebody or if somebody's cheated on you. I've been in a relationship where I've done both, right? I know G hasn't. He put it on his Facebook. He was just like, "No,
That,
thanks, it's been me." All
that
right,
ain't
great.
me.
You
That
got you
ain't.
got a you got a gem in your crown I don't have, right? So listen, he like, nope. And honey, listen, wife is still as true to this day, baby. I'm coming downstairs. But listen, so what happens is when somebody is cheating on you, they tend to accuse you of cheating on them. Oftentimes that's how it works. It's like, oh, you're doing that because you're cheating. It's like nobody's thinking about what are you talking about? It's projection. That's oftentimes what it is that we do. So and as we go into the last topic of S's, right? And we talking about we spoke about that before. That's the bitternesses, the unforgivenesses, the cowardice, right? And the prowessness and pridefulness, right? I want to talk about because Jay already talked about having the mentality of only the strong survive when he spoke about humanism, right? So I want to talk about why why do you think we need humility? Why do you think we need humility?
What? Without it, it is total chaos. Like, can you imagine if nobody was humble? Like, it's okay to be confident, which I think everybody on this panel is, and most of the people in the chat and on all platforms have confidence. But if that confidence was lacking humility, remember that the bull he had like the red face and he was doing all this stuff and he was talking all this trash to everybody and everybody voted him like class president of the country. Remember that guy? Yeah. When you lack humility, you kind of run
Orange
off
face.
at the top like that. Like it's kind of crazy. Like if there was no humility, I don't know. I wouldn't want to see that. Like humility is absolutely necessary to the human experience because without it, the human experience becomes tainted in my mind.
Is everybody like Ric Flair if it's no humility? Like, do they walk around like?
I'm gonna say
That's how I came into work. I'm not gonna lie. When the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I walked in the office just like that.
we're gonna revisit
Somebody to say something.
this humility thing for a second. Like sometimes you just need to take that walk.
Diamond rings.
Like
Rolex watch.
I mean, I guess for me, the lack of humility reminds me of that white guy in that 7-Eleven and the other dude with the spiked iced tea. Because like you can get real excited until that can hit you.
Right. So let's talk. Really quick. I'm going to define humility, right? So that I know we're joking, but humility means to be modest in behavior, attitude, or even your spirit, not arrogant or prideful. It means to show reverence and to be deferential or submissive and show respect. It means to not be pretentious and to take a lowly station. That is anti-cultural to America. Ain't no pride like what? American pride.
I'm going.
Ain't no pride like American pride. It's not. It's countercultural. We get on screens and lie. I woke up like this. You lying. You this the daggone. It's the. It's like the 50th time you took a picture. Like you didn't wake up like that. So I think it's very important for us to understand humility is not, again, I said it before, it's not thinking less of yourself than what you ought. It's actually thinking about yourself less, right? So it's putting yourself in the proper stance, right? So we have to have that perspective to get exactly what Marcus said, Coco said, which is we would be a mess if we weren't humble. We would be a mess if we weren't humble.
Can I throw something out there real quick? And I'm gonna be clear and honest with this, but hopefully no one takes this as a shot. Okay. Being humble is not something that you brag about. And what I mean is that there was a particular rapper, one of my favorites. You may get this, some people may get, some people might not. And he used to say, I know my place, so I write my name in lowercase, right? Speaking to his humility. And I'm like this, you're bragging about how humble you are.
Right.
And I'm like this, so that means that you're not humble. And so
Right.
I think that like you can't push, you can't make yourself humble.
Right.
Right. And so I think that's a good thing that throughout this, you can't, some people think you can, like they'll talk softer. they'll say really arrogant stuff with a soft voice. And like this, I'm not yelling at you. Right. And so it was like this, that's not humility. Like,
Calm down, Junior.
yeah.
I'm not even, and it's like, what? That's the definition of gaslighting. When people, that is what gaslighting is. And narcissists have the ability to constantly be focused on themselves, right? So the question that was posted was, how does one think of themselves less?
I only know one scenario. I really like. I ain't gonna hold you. To be honest, I only know one scenario where I think of myself less, and that's when I'm like this. I could do something for me, or I can do something that will benefit my son, right? And then I'm like, I'm not thinking about my safety. I'm not thinking about my emotions. Is like I got to do this because this will benefit him, right?
Can I ask you a question? Are you not thinking about it, or is it that it's not the same priority that it was before? Because if I just from knowing you, you do think about your safety, because if you're not safe, then your son ain't safe. So you got to make sure in light of that. And I'm saying that because a lot of times people can think that you mean that extreme, like it means that I got to be somebody's doormat or something like that. No, because you answered the question. It's to be in relation. It's to be in relation, right? So either and to be in relation with kids, a spouse, community. That is how you think less of yourself. You start focusing on the things around you that you know give value, not to just yourself, but to society as a whole.
And sometimes I think it is that, but like I know, like I think it's easier with my son. Something like this, you know what? He can't pay me back, right? Like if I'm gonna give him $5 or give him $20, I'm not gonna be like, yo, where my money at next week? Like, no, he can't pay me back. So it's just like
my broke friend.
Listen, you may say that, but I tell my daughter, run that money. Listen, I ask my daughter all the time, where that money at? Run your pockets. Like, I don't care about none of that. Because if I'm giving you money, somebody else is blessing you too. Like, run my coins back. I don't get them, but we definitely had these conversations.
Just know that
she shut me down.
I pay somebody back.
Huh? So I think that to answer the question, how does one think of themselves less? I think it's by focusing on that. And from a perspective of a Christian, from a Christ follower, I think it's by looking to God and looking at Christ, who was the example for everything that I'm supposed to do and be. So to me, that's what modeling humility is. Look at Christ, who knew no sin, who put on flesh, came down here to be amongst us. And so I love what was said here, right? The insecurities will keep me from being present in the community. That's right. Because they weigh us down, right? And think about what we do as a community. Sometimes we were talking about this offline before. A lot of times people in our community, especially if can we be honest? This is honestly speaking, right? A lot of people in the Black community, we tear each other down when people try to do something that we see as different, right? I remember being an artist, going to school, and they like, yo, she got that big effing case. What you got in there? She got a bomb. It was a portfolio case. And I'm sitting there.
What bomb you got?
I'm like, you dumb. This ain't even a type. Like, what you talking about, right? So what happens is when you begin to walk in a certain level of freedom, it is threatening to people. It is threatening to people who have insecurities, because your freedom, understand this, your freedom will remind people that they are bound if they are not free. You being free will remind, how dare you be free? That's why one of the most dangerous things to wear in the hood is a smile, because this shows the audacity of hope. How dare you be hopeful and my life is hellacious? It is dangerous. You have to tuck your joy in your coat like it's like a Teflon coat. You got to tuck it in there and reveal it at the right time. I think we do ourselves a disservice by not looking unto the perfecter and the creator of us, and not trying to serve one another, right? So we getting ready to wrap up stuff, but I want to ask a couple more questions. So one of the things that ends up happening is, once we get hurt, we become bitter, or we become angry, and we become unforgiving. Coco, you ain't really talked a lot. I want Coco and maybe G or whoever to speak to this. How does bitterness become unforgiveness, and what's the consequences?
How does unforgiveness become
Oh yeah,
bitterness?
yeah. How does unforgiveness become bitterness, and what's the consequences?
Um. So I pulled up a definition here that I want to read. Well, not a definition; it's a statement. Unforgiveness creates an emotional storm of distress in which feelings of stress, anxiety, depression, insecurity, and fear surface. So that's the beginning part. You are in an unforgiving state, or you're ruminating about something that went wrong. You're not letting it go. You're creating all this anxiety, stress, and insecurity. And if that continues, how that becomes bitterness is normally those feelings of insecurity, distress, anxiety, um, can turn to resentment for the person, because you'll say stuff like, "Well, how dare they?" or "How come they didn't understand?" or "How come they didn't see where I was coming from?" And then the inability to let go and begin the healing process is what turns the unforgiveness into bitterness over time.
Mm, mm.
I think that was perfect. That's
Yeah,
perfect
that was
answer.
that was on point. That was on point. Um, and unforgiveness. Just to go back, for those who like, well, what exactly is it? It's when you don't give allowance for error or weakness, or you have the ability, you don't have the ability, or you're unwilling to um, let go of an offense. And I just want to say this: we're not saying that you weren't offended. I think a lot of times we think that if we forgive someone, it means that they were right, or that somehow what they did to us was right. And we feel like a sucker. One of the tricks of the enemy is to make you feel like a sucker when you do something that is righteous, when you apologize, when you humble yourself, when you listen to someone who could be wrong. All of those things are a part of developing character that is difficult. The very virtues of life, the virtues of life are things that you can't just read and have just book knowledge about. Like you can read all the books you want on patience. It does not give you patience. You can read all the books you want on how to be forgiving. It does not make you forgiving. There are life lessons, the school of hard knocks, that you have to go to in order to learn, oh, I'm really not that patient. You thought you was patient till you had a kid. And then you understand why people need child line clearances to begin with, right? You thought you were
Or a
patient,
teacher, huh?
or
Or a
te-
teacher.
or a teacher. God bless you, Jones. God bless you. You're both, right? So it's nothing. It's
At the
nothing
same
wrong
time.
at the
This
same
is
at the
virtual
same
stuff.
time. At the same time, right? But it's nothing wrong with saying that you've been wrong. And here's the thing: there's nothing wrong with being hurt or angry. I want to say this: anger is a secondary emotion. I said this before, and I'll say it again. Underneath anger is always one or two things: fear and or some type of pain. Fear and or some type. You break my heart, I want to break your face. That's the whole Lemonade album. That's James.
Yo, you can be angry and do something that someone might say that's overboard, but not being sin.
Yep.
I'm not gonna get into that. We got like
The
15
Bible
minutes
says,
left.
be angry and sin not. It's not saying don't be angry, folks. It's saying be angry. The reason why anger is good is because it mobilizes us. It compels us to do something. Righteous indignation says something must be done. Fear and wounds, they disable us. They paralyze us. They keep us from moving. So what bitterness and what unforgiveness does is it turns into bitterness. And bitterness, I heard it like someone said it like this: it's stabbing somebody else and waiting, it's stabbing yourself and waiting for somebody else to bleed. It ain't gonna never happen. It
Uh,
ain't it don't work like that.
so I'm as we're talking about this thing of forgiveness. Our I'm thinking of this recent video that came out. I think it was Isla or something. I forget the lady's name, but she was sitting down with her father and
Iyanla
his mother.
Vanzant.
There we go. Right, and so the mom poisoned the kids against the dad. She told the kids that they were sexually molested by the dad, and convinced them of that. Right, and then but they were almost on some tip of like, we don't remember this ever happening. And so they go in there and they were like, hey, they did the lie detector test. And it was like, hey, he had no deception. But mom was like, hey, did you convince your kids that he did this? They was like, she said no, but they said you were being deceptive. And it was like, and so he was, it was like almost the kids were adults, like almost 27, 30, being convinced by their mom that the dad did some stuff to them when they were younger. And he was just like, and so and when she asked her, what do you got to say after you did these things? Her response was, why didn't you work harder to get your kids? And then even the kids were like, you owe him an apology. And she said, I'm sorry. And he was like this, I don't want your apology. I don't forgive you, because now there's an ingrained hate inside the kids who, like, they want to love their dad, but they have to fight now of all they were convinced of for 30 years before
Negative
they
core
found the truth,
beliefs.
right?
And
Then you didn't do it. And I was just like, so, and I think that like this, those are real wrestles that people have, where it's like, I can't just forgive you because you hurt multitudes of people, and now we're here to deal with the rubble. And even in the midst of you could apologize and we could figure it out, but I can't because your first response was very unapologetic.
mm,
Even though you created the pain. So,
mm,
and I ain't gonna hold you, forgiveness is one of those things that I struggle with.
mm-hmm.
I remember in one of my college classes, they were talking about forgiveness when I went to Eastern, and I'm like, I forget people and move on, and never return. And so,
But we really don't fully forget them. Because
sure,
if we never return, that means that a part of us remembers not where
got
to
to go
go.
back.
And a part of us is still held there. And I think that what what we can what we can do, and I do think it's important to say, as Christians, specifically as Christians, I can't talk about any other religious belief system because I'm not in that, right? But as Christians, oftentimes we do each other a disservice by trying to force the forgiveness process before we truly acknowledge the type of wound that happened.
Hmm.
Like I've seen people try to, in leadership, try to force forgiveness on people who have been sexually assaulted. And they're like, but do you forgive the person? Do you forgive the person? And I'm like, yo, I'm like, y'all about to kick me out.
Well, like, y'all putting too many things before the horse.
I am triggered. Okay. And the
Exactly.
reason, and I was triggered not only as a survivor of abuse, I was triggered as a therapist. I was triggered at these things that people will weaponize and say, oh, you think you smarter than guy. Like if we was all really walking in the word, we wouldn't need counselors. And you just upset because you got bitterness in your heart towards people because you was abused. And like I've had people throw these darts at me and they not sticking no more. Thank you, God.
Can we say
But
forgiveness is a process?
forgiveness is just that.
Because we think it's like say sorry. Like, I'm not sorry. Why say sorry? I'm not apologetic about it.
Right.
but
But there, and you know, it's funny you say that because Coco and I were just talking about this the other day. And shout out to Crystal Clear, who's like, hey, she on Facebook tuning in and said, hey, we pray for you and we praying for you that you get well. But forgiveness is definitely a process. I had somebody say you never really forgave the person if the next day you got to forgive them again. I'm like, no, that's not how that works. You forgave the person. The next day you need to remind yourself that you forgave the person. That's how that works. Scars happen. That's like saying, hey, I've overcome temptation of if somebody addicted to porn. And they're like, well, yesterday I said no to porn. So today, if I'm tempted by porn and I am not really over my porn, shut up. That's not even how any of this works.
Yo,
I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we allow bitterness we allow bitterness to fester, and that becomes a part of our personality, and we own it. And at the same time, we find it comforting. There's a comfort, if we're gonna be honest, in bitterness. I'm gonna give you a
Like what?
perspective like black folk, right? We could
Getting
see
comfortable.
somebody white. I'm gonna be real honest. I'm gonna be blackity black honest. We could see
she
somebody
black,
white.
y'all. She black, y'all. Like it,
We
but
could
she's
see
black, y'all.
someone white and they do something that is wrong. He said you can forgive, but Uber Dynamics, random. We could see somebody who is white and they do us dirty. It's a black person could do the same thing. If a white person did it, we like, we know you did it because you white devil. In our mind, we go off, and you can't say we don't. I'm gonna say the quiet parts out loud. I'm gonna say and here's the thing: we could be right in our assessment. We could be right in our assessment, but it's coming from a place that's like, unless God did a work in your heart, and you're like, oh man, look at you. You still on racism? Ah, that's crazy, right? Because it's true. Y'all know it. Y'all know it. We quick to do it. Women are quick to do it with men. Let a man lead a taller seat up. Oh my, all y'all dirty trifling. You like, what just happened? What just happened? What happened? Dudes do it with women. A woman, hey, or we go, you said you were gonna take me out. Oh, here you go digging B. It's like, what just happened? I'm just reminding you that you said you was gonna take me out. I didn't even say I wanted you to pay. So I think we do this with our wounds, and they reinforce the wounds and the belief systems that we have and create almost like a spiritual algorithm that keeps the same stuff coming our way. Keeps the same stuff coming our way. Did anybody want to speak to that real quick?
No, I was just gonna say it's kind of like an addiction. Sometimes you get addicted to the pain, you know,
Mm,
because it's a comfortable position to be in. Some people want to be so self-righteous that they would rather say that they feeling the pain and this is what I'm going through, just to be right. Like this
mm,
person hurt me, and I don't. I mean, me personally, I don't get it. It's not a. To me, it's like if it's a situation, I'm looking for resolution. I'm not looking to be right. You know, let's figure out how we can solve the situation. You
mm.
know, I'm not. I'm not like. what you said was true. I'll say that what you said was true. Sometimes you see folks of another complexion and they do something and you like, you feeling it. However, I have been in positions where I'm like, you know what? Looking at the whole picture, sometimes people don't even realize that stuff that they're doing is racist because they
Mhm.
don't have an understanding of it.
They don't
You
have
know,
the
some
context of it, right? And so
exactly.
they don't have the context of it. Also, I just want to point out that Crystal Clear said that it's forgiveness is important, but it's also important to note that forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation, and because reconciliation requires repentance, right? So what she means by reconciliation is people coming back together. What she means by repentance is a word that means to turn away from, to turn in your mind, and to turn in your actions. A lot of times we think forgiveness means you and I gotta be kumbaya like we used to be. No, there are actions that have consequences, and sometimes I can forgive you, but we just gotta go our separate ways
No
after
more
that.
relationship.
Right, right, right. And there are times when that's the case, and are times when we can say, "I forgive you, but you better pay us reparations." You understand what I'm saying? Give us our reparations now. That's a whole
They
nother
gave us
story,
a holiday. I'm playing.
right?
That wasn't for us.
I
They
know
didn't
they
even
put the
they
day off in
didn't
the
even
summer.
give
That's for
they didn't even
The
everybody.
holiday is a
Everybody get the
school day.
holiday. Everybody get that day
The
off.
holiday is a school day.
right. Because he was for everybody, even though
Right.
he admitted in the civil rights case that we helped to assassinate him, but he was for everybody, and we're gonna keep on promoting the same speech and not the speech after that when he said the dream was a nightmare, because he was for everybody, and now we got a day off. Thank you, Martin Luther the King. Like, we like, get the heck out of here. Get the heck out of here. But I do believe that it is true, especially as Christians, that the measure you forgive will be the measure that you're going to be forgiven. I think that is, we say it when we say the Lord's Prayer or the disciples' prayer, depending on how you look at it. But um, before, Crystal Clear is going off in the comments on my Facebook threads. She said every day should be a holiday because we built this thing.
Hey.
Hey, she's going off. Here's the thing, folks. Does anybody else want to comment on any of the S's that we spoke about? Anybody want to comment on any of the S's and the importance when we speak about unforgiveness? We spoke about pridefulness, right? I know, G, if you want to talk quickly about the difference between pridefulness and dignity, if did you want to talk about that?
I'm good. Um,
All right.
I thought you was gonna go to the next thing.
Um, so again, we're gonna wrap it up, folks. What are some of the things we could do to address the things that we talked about? I know we spoke about them in order as we went through them. We spoke about the importance of humility and all of these other things, but what are some of the things that you think we can do to address this?
Have
The things
honest
that stunt our growth.
conversations.
Be real.
Yeah, have honest conversations with each other. Be accountable to each other. Do
Mm,
not bulk at accountability. Accept accountability. Do enough introspective work to understand that, not just understand, because we all understand there are areas where we need to work in and that we have flaws and that we're works in progress. I think that's pretty obvious. But be willing to accept the when someone corrects you. But in order to, I guess, be able to accept it, you need to have the right tribe around you that's correcting you. So I remember earlier in the comments, somebody said you different people get different versions of you. Some bring out the good, some bring out the bad. That's true. But we got to limit our exposure to the ones that bring out the bad, because, like, realistically, what's the benefit of that? Like, the
mm,
cost benefit analysis of that situation isn't in our favor. So why are we putting ourselves in that situation? Whether it's a family member, a relative, if it's your spouse, you might need to change your life. But, you know, we got to have real conversations with ourselves first and foremost, the people around us, and be willing to accept accountability and not, bulk at it and make it difficult for us to be led to the situations that can help us grow.
I agree. I agree. And we also have individuals that agree. Anyone else?
Can you repeat the question, please?
The
I was
question.
going to say, I think that Marcus really wrapped that up really well. I'm sorry, the king.
The question was, how do we what can we do about everything that we spoke about? Like, how do we resolve the thing that we spoke about? All the isms that keep us from growth. That's why he gave the litany of things we said. In addition, to be honest, I think that I want to say pursue truth. The reason why this show is called Honestly Speaking is because at first it was going to be called Truthfully Speaking, because truth is important. But you can't even understand truth unless you're honest with yourself, right? Then you can begin to pursue truth, right? So the aim of it is to hopefully for us to pursue truth and know that everywhere you go, you take you with you. So if you keep seeing the same type of patterns everywhere you go, either you live in a land of that pattern, which can be the case at times, or you're the common denominator. And there are some life lessons that you need to learn. So I'm going to say, in addition to everything that they said, please understand that your life has value and dignity, and to persevere and never give up on yourself, because there are some people who are so beaten down by the things that the world says that they don't even have it to muster up to try to hold themselves accountable, because they see it as another task. And I'm just here to say your life has value. You were created with purpose, and you should be treated with dignity. And that does not give you the right to be unforgiving, bitter, or have a chip on your shoulder because people didn't recognize that. Multiple things can be true. Okay. Um, G, is there anything you want to say before we go?
Only thing I got to add is expose things. Expose things and be open to
Hmm.
resolutions or solutions. A lot of times we hide. We don't want to experience the pain. We don't want people to know that we're experiencing the pain. And somebody said something like, don't tell people your problems because most of them don't even care, and the rest of them glad as you. And I'm like, it was like, I don't know if I should cheer or should I be like, dang, that hurt. Like,
Yeah.
you
Right.
shouldn't feel that way. You should be able to be open and honest and express yourself and try to be comfortable with being vulnerable. You know,
Mm.
be comfortable with being vulnerable. If you're not vulnerable, if you don't show your vulnerability, how do you know where you need to work? You know, how
Exactly.
can you improve?
Exactly. And Crystal Clear said she's given hers. She said growth requires welcoming accountability, not just accepting the fact that you need it. And don't be afraid to thrive and not merely survive. Okay? That whole crabs in a barrel thing, crabs pull each other down because that's what crabs do. Don't be a crab. And it's their way, they're trying to get out themselves, right? And honestly, it's also because they ain't even supposed to be in a barrel. They somewhere they ain't supposed to be. So that's it's already been a setup. So with that having been said, folks, um, we are honestly speaking, as we always say, crystal clear. We hope you get better, but love God, love your neighbor, and take care of yourself. Peace.